This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on preparations for counting of votes tomorrow. The participants are Akshay Rawat, former Director General of Election Commission of India, and Ashwini Srivastav, journalist.
Results for the assembly elections held in 5 states will be out tomorrow. It is a big day for all the political parties and people of the 5 states of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Goa, Uttarakhand and Manipur. All eyes will be on the results which would be coming from Uttar Pradesh, which is the biggest of all. Exit polls have predicted BJP getting second term in Uttar Pradesh, whereas AAP seem to be surprising all in Punjab. So can you decipher the importance of poll results that will be out tomorrow?
Elections are the life and blood of functional democracy of India. And as you said, we had a series of important elections covering 5 states and about 18 crore voters in these 5 states, out of which 15 crore are from UP alone. As you said, the UP is very important. So we had a big election in hand and the polling was going on in 7 phases for the last about a month. We have to see it in historical perspective. Periodic and regular elections are the best way democracy expresses itself. And it has been happening in India from 1951 onwards, when the first national elections were held without fail, each time, every time, and on time. Many times because of some logistic convenience, the state elections, based on the duration of the concerned assemblage, are clubbed together. Like we had 5 elections now. And similarly, in the coming 2022 also, in the later stage, there will be other elections. And we have a national election tenure of the current Lok Sabha, which is due in 24. So political parties and observers do look at all these elections which come in the middle between one national election to the other as sort of testing the waters. For example, now the NDA-led government at the center is about halfway through. So these voting or the results, I am not going to comment much on the exit poll which you mentioned. Exit polls are a different cup of tea. It depends on their sample size. It depends on how sincerely they did it. It depends on if there was any political motivation of that. But the gap between the publication of exit poll and the actual result is very small. So as you said very rightly, tomorrow when the counting is taken up, the actual results will be there for everyone to see. But for political parties, it's very important for 2 reasons. One is just to hold on to the power or to come to power in the states so that they can take charge of the states. Like in UP, the BJP government has been running it for last 5 years. In 2017, it came. So they are seeking a mandate for another term, whereas there are challengers who want to replace the present government. So also in Punjab, we have seen in these elections, just before the elections, particularly for a state like Punjab, to a good extent in Goa, what has happened is that a lot of reshuffling has happened. We have seen good amount of political activity. In fact, hyper political activity, which is marked by mutual abuse, tall claims and promises, the issue of freebies, and of course, rolling out of some development agenda as well and making claims and counterclaims. In a situation like that, tomorrow is test day. How much the people have been able to connect with the narrative that various political parties have come across, and how much is their hold on the people's mind and people's sentiments, and how much people accept them as a real representative. That will be tested tomorrow.
How do you see the Election Commission's role in organizing these assembly polls during this COVID time? I mean, this was not the normal time. So to conduct election in these 5 states, especially I would emphasize on Uttar Pradesh, it was not an easy task for the poll body. How do you see the preparation?
Extraordinary. In fact, from election to election, from time to time, the challenges which come before the Election Commission as perhaps world's largest election management body is humongous. But every time they have shown new skills, innovation and hard work. Just mind you, the election machinery of India is not only the Election Commission. It is the Chief Electoral Officer and the concerned staff at the state level and the District Election Officer, the Returning Officer, and there is huge paraphernalia. In fact, most of the civil administration becomes subservient to the cause of good election management at the time of election. And you very rightly said, these have not been normal time. We have been affected by COVID for more than 2.5 years. But if you recall, the Bihar election of 2020 was a trendsetter. it was the first SOP or the template to have one of the largest election anywhere in the world. Bihar population was not small. Electorate was not small. And at that time, the challenge of COVID-19 was very high. But to keeping vote and voters both secure, Election Commission did a tremendous job to conduct Bihar election 2020. Then came other series of elections, for example, the West Bengal series of elections in the summer of 21. And that also they modified from their earlier learnings from Bihar. And they had a very strong and secure conduct of elections. But at that time, if you remember, the second wave was in force and it is a terrible challenge to protect life and to protect the election staff who are on duty and the polling stations and the polling process. But by taking the help of state health agencies, central health agencies, being in continuous consultation to people who are in charge of safety in terms of health, Election Commission did a great job. And this time, it was a little more interesting because when the election started and got announced about 1.5 months back, the Omicron was all around and it was looking as if there could be a big third wave. But Election Commission had to take all this into cognizance. And if you remember, in the first part of the conduct of election, the campaign was very much restricted. For the first time in India's electoral history, there had to be taken a big and innovative step of stopping public rallies and road shows.
Right. I would say that there were certain complaints from political parties that putting a bar on physical rallies would be disadvantageous to them. And there were certain other measures which were taken by the election commissions, like they raised the expenses limit for the political parties that could be spent for campaigning because they could not hold physical rallies, and then they put a ban on the number of people who could join for campaigning. How do you see these complaints from some of the political parties who said that enough was not done by the Election Commission, though we know that conducting elections during this tough time of COVID was not an easy task?
I think by and large, political parties have learned to live their campaign life in a different manner. It is a major behavior change on part of political parties, which is very commendable and which holds good for future conduct of elections and the future of democracy. Why I am saying this? I am saying this because from 1951 onwards, physical campaign was the order of the day in the times of elections. But this time, under the situation of COVID-19 and complying to the Election Commission's directions, I beg to differ that political parties complained too much. They did not. There were some complaints, yes, because some parties thought that they were not resourced enough to mount an effective digital campaign that depended on contact with people. But you have to give the credit to political parties. That Election Commission took a wise decision under the circumstances and political parties by and large complied with it. Now, as the Omicron threat receded and as there was more comfort in terms of health and security of voters and staff, because the infection was declared by those who are medical experts and scientists not to be that much damaging and it had really subsided, then Election Commission opened up the campaign. Exactly. And the political parties availed the liberalized campaign modality as well. So it has been a very interesting evolution of restriction and withdrawal of restriction during the campaign period. Why I'm saying, to me, it is evolution of the Indian electoral and campaign system. If at one point of time it was thought that election campaign is only holding up public rallies, this particular set of elections disproved it. It proved that there can be contact with people even without a physical rally. And then when physical rallies are allowed, they happen. Now, the last point which you mentioned in this connection is the expenditure. The Election Commission's rational idea was that if parties and candidates are going to the digital campaign mode, there will be some more infrastructure both on hardware and software. So they should be given some allowance in terms of ceiling of expenditure. And that was allowed. And that was useful.
Elections were held in 1 month's time. I mean, it has started from February 10 and counting will be tomorrow, that is March 10. You have long experience related to Election Commission. How do you see the conduct overall, as in what all goes into it? And they would be conducting the counting in time. That is 7 was the last day of polling and counting will be on 10th. If you could throw light as to what all preparation goes into planning for the election and then conducting the counting in time.
It is a massive exercise. In fact, it is called the largest event management of the world, the Indian elections. For many of us who might not know, for your listeners, a particular set of elections, say for example the UP and other 4 states, Punjab, Uttarakhand, Manipur and Goa. If the elections are being held in February, March, the preparation starts more than 6 months before. Perhaps many of us would not even know. It doesn't happen like a magic with a switch of a button. There are large amount of consultation. In a crisis-like situation like COVID-19, the consultations are more. For fixing the date, the consultations with political parties, with state government authorities of the concerned states, with central government agencies, particularly the Home Ministry, which is in charge of the security forces, because one of the most important arrangements that Election Commission makes is to have a safe and secure election, that there is no coercion, there is no intimidation, there is no fear, there is no violence. And it is done by deployment of central security forces, because the state forces are not enough. And sometimes the other political parties do not have enough trust in the local police. They would like a central police force deployment. Whether they are available, from where they can be moved, to which state, in what phase. So these are diligent work. The school routine, exam systems, the harvest systems, if there is a cyclone or flood somewhere, if there are festivals, if there is some local disease or infection which is happening somewhere, these all have to be taken into account. One has to be very alert and understand that how much preparation goes into conduct of an election. After that, you have staff requisitioned specially. Large number of staff from all departments assembled for the purpose of elections. And drawing the special SOPs, doing EVM preparation, electronic voting machine, now VVPAT added up to that. Their functionality, their safe movement and storage, their efficiency test and efficiency evidencing before political parties who are stakeholders. And then you have mentioned like tomorrow the counting centers. And in counting sector, again, the arrangement for political parties to have confidence. You see, it is a management of trust and distrust both. There should not be anything which would make political parties lose faith in election. That is why Indian elections, because of this professional preparation, professional conduct of elections at the polling stations and counting and declaration of result, because of the all-round A to Z efficiency, Indian elections have come out as the most credible elections from the 1951 onwards for the last so many decades. It's evolving. New technology coming, expenditure control measures. Now the remote voting efforts are going on to make it possible, to make sure that no one is left behind, to make sure that voter participation increases. All these are evolving all the time by learning from past elections, whether state general elections, Lok Sabha general elections, or even by-elections. Continuous learning process by the election management authority.
And how do you see Election Commission's efforts in encouraging voters to come out and vote this time?
That's a very interesting point for this time, because recently People and Election Commission both have raised expectations. Around 2009-10, there was a realization that all the people who are eligible are not registering on time, and all the people who are registered on electoral roll are not coming out to vote. So this can generally be described as a democracy deficit, though India is world's largest functional democracy. So it is not a great situation. So there was the election management, the ECI, took a big step called SWEEP, Systematic Voters Education and Electoral Participation. So there was a deliberate, scientific and organized approach to get in touch with people, to engage citizens through information, through motivation and through facilitation. So there was a huge increase in 2014 national elections in participation. Then there was another % increase in 2019. And all the state elections have been showing 5-10% increase after that. But this time, it has either stagnated or has been a slightly lower voting. So I think citizens and all concerned agencies, we can't leave everything to Election Commission. It has to be everyone's business to augment and enhance the spirit of civic citizenship in terms of electoral participation in the coming days.
It would be interesting to see who wins where and with what margin when the results are out tomorrow. All eyes would be on TV and news websites which would be announcing results from tomorrow onwards. Thank you so much for talking to us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on preparations for counting of votes tomorrow. The participants were Akshay Rawat, former Director General of Election Commission of India, and Ashwini Srivastav, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.